Hey everybody, I'm Brian with Aromacup.com. Thank you guys as always for joining me here today in my virtual coffee shop brought to you by Aromacup.com. In today's exclusive video, I have a side-by-side comparison of two single-serve coffee machines from Starbucks. I've got the Verismo 585 single-serve machine and the Verismo 580. I'm just going to give you the side-by-side so you can have all the information you need to make an informed decision when you go out to purchase one of these machines for your own at-home coffee shop. So let's dive right in and talk about the differences between these two machines. All right, so let's start from the ground up and talk about the different features on these machines. Now, both of them have removable trays, which you can use to resize based on what kind of mug or tumbler it is that you're going to use in the machine. So you can see that I can just pull out the extra plastic tray and I can get more clearance to be able to brew into larger mugs and tumblers and things like that. So that's very useful depending on the cup size that you're going to be using. Both of them have a removable tray for being able to clean the machine and access the pod holder, which is inside of the machine. Now, the pod holder on the 580 will hold 10 spent Keffi pods. The pod holder on the 585 is obviously much larger and it'll hold 30. Now, both of these, while it is useful that both of them can hold a number of spent pods, you really do want to clean these out pretty frequently, especially if you're using milk pods, because if you let that milk stand inside of the machine, you're definitely going to get a little bit of bacteria buildup, and that is no good. All right, moving on up, let's talk about the spigot on both of these machines. And it's pretty much the same, except that on the 585 you have an adjustable spigot. So you've got these plastic handles on the sides here, and you can kind of click the spigot up and down in order to adjust the distance between the spigot and your cup. That's pretty useful for being able to cut down on splashing, spillage, stuff like that while you are brewing. The 580 does not have that feature. Looking to the left of the spigot, you have the buttons for operation of the machine. Now you can see immediately many more buttons and an LCD screen here on the Verismo 585. Over here on the 580, much more limited. We've got 3 buttons for operation. Access all the functions that you need for the machine, such as rinsing it, brewing an espresso pod, brewing a coffee pod, and brewing a milk pod. Same over here on the 585, you've got those same buttons, except you're going to notice that you have a dedicated rinse button as opposed to on the 580 where the rinse button is built into the espresso button. So it's cool that there's a dedicated rinse button on this machine. Also on the 585, you have a temperature reduction button that allows you to drop manually the brew temp of your beverage on the machine from being able to be at about 193 degrees. You can drop down to about 158. On brewing with the 585. Now, as opposed to the 580, that's a little bit different. Where on the 580, you do have variable temperature, but you don't really have control over it. That's just done by the machine and what it is that you're brewing with. Now, big difference between these two machines is the LCD screen that you're going to have access to on the 585. This LCD screen, when the machine is powered up, is going to give you sort of a notification center for the machine. It's going to tell you what type of beverage it is that you're brewing, and it's also going to give you access to some of the other features on the machine, such as when you remove the tray, you're going to notice that it's going to blink and tell you that the tray is not properly in place. This is the same for if you run out of water in the water tank. I'll just pull the tank off, and you can see that when I remove the tank, the screen is going to blink and let me know that there's no water in the machine, so that's pretty useful. This is also going to tell you when it's time to descale the machine, and it's also going to let you know when you have entered the reduced temperature brewing mode. Let's talk about the water tank on both of these machines because there is an obvious difference between the two. Both of them remove really easily from the machine, which is very cool. That's one of the things I like about the Starbucks machine is it's really easy to remove the tank. This is the Verismo 580 tank. That's about 33 ounces. Here is the big granddaddy tank that is on the 585, 118 fluid ounces. So big difference in the water tank between these two. Another big difference that you're going to find between these two machines is that there is a water filter included in the Verismo 585 tank. And that water filter, of course, is going to help to give you a better tasting brew because it's going to filter the water. Now, between both of these machines, again, you do want to use filtered or distilled water no matter what, because no matter what, that is going to give you a better tasting brew out of the machine. But you can see quite a difference between the tanks on both of these machines. I really like the very large tank on the 585. It's a pretty impressively sized tank. I think that's actually the biggest tank that I've seen on any single serve machine. You're not going to be refilling that one a lot. On the 580, you're probably going to refill this tank fairly frequently because you're going to use up that water in the tank pretty quickly. While we have both of the machines facing this way, let's just point out the size difference between the two. The 580 obviously much smaller overall in size, a lot shorter. The 585 a lot bigger, and especially in just overall size. So this one's going to fit maybe a little bit easier on the average countertop. This one's going to take up a little bit more space. But you're also going to notice the clearance that you have available to you, especially when you remove the trays on these two machines. There's a lot more clearance on the 585. And that's really going to give you access to being able to put tumblers in filled with ice and various things like that. You could still do that on the 580, it's just there's a little bit less clearance. So overall size difference between these two, definitely a noticeable difference with the 585 over the 580. Okay, so brewing on both of these machines is the same. We'll talk about that in just a second. But let me just mention some of the features of both of these machines that you just can't see because they're built into the machines. Both of them have a 19 bar pressure pump, so same pressure pump type between both of these machines. Both of them have an automatic pod ejection system, and that's when you're done brewing. You just simply eject the spent pod into that pod collector I was talking about. Both of them have manual water level regulators. They have automatic start and stop modes. They have integrated rinse functions between both of them. There's a heat up time of 15 seconds on both of these, so that's pretty cool because they're going to turn themselves off automatically. When you come back and power them on, they're going to be ready to go real quickly. And that is because of the energy saving mode that exists in both of these. Turns the machine off after 5 minutes, so it's not going to sit there and just stay hot when you're not using it. That's pretty much all the differences that are inside of these machines that you're not going to notice, and you're only going to see if you have both of the machines sitting side by side, of course, and you're comparing the features as I am. So let's go ahead and brew some coffee with both of these machines. Now, the first thing we need to do before we brew is we need to rinse the machine, because typically when these machines turn themselves off, they're going to want to be rinsed when you turn them back on. So we need to run a rinse cycle on both. Now you see, I was really easily able to place my Bodum mug right here underneath the brew station on the 585, but over here on the 580, there's just not enough clearance. So that's a difference right there immediately. I didn't even have to remove the bottom tray on the 585 to put my mug under the brew station. So let's go ahead and rinse both of these machines. Again, there's a dedicated rinse button on the 585. And over here on the 580, we need to just press the espresso button in order to run the rinse cycle. So we're not going to use up too much water in the case of either of these machines when we are running the rinse cycle, but again, it's nice to have that bigger water tank on the 585 to be able to really not have to fill up the tank too frequently, which I definitely like. All right, so let's go ahead and brew some coffee with both of these machines. I have some house blend Kefir pods right here. We've talked about these. You need to make sure that you remove the silver foil lining on the bottom of these pods before you brew with a brewed pod. So there is an extra step there. It's not really a big deal, but it's something you need to keep in mind. All right, so now we're going to open up the brew station on both of these machines. We're going to pop our pods in. We're going to close those levers up, puncture those pods, and now we're ready to start brewing. Now I'm just going to go ahead and run the brewed coffee cycle on both of these. They should both brew in the same amount of time, so I'm just going to press both the buttons at the same time and we'll see what happens. So here we go. Now again, 19 bar pressure pump in both of these machines, and that pressure is going to vary depending on what type of beverage it is that you're doing with the machine that you happen to be brewing. But I have found that that pressure pump certainly does provide a really good draw on the coffee that you're going to get out of the Kefir pod. That's pretty important considering how small those pods are. They're definitely not very large when it comes to coffee pod size, but the quality of the coffee that I see coming out of them has actually been pretty impressive. good flavor, and the heat out of both of these machines, quite good. A lot of folks, I know that temperature is pretty important to them when it comes to what it is that they brew out of their machine, and I found that both of these machines do manage to keep up that temperature that you're looking for, about 190 degrees. Nope, and it looks like the 585 has finished before the 580. 580's taken a little bit longer to do its job right now. So again, same pressure pump between both of these, but there's obviously a little bit of a difference between both of them. All right, so the 580 is done. That took definitely a good bit longer than the 585, but we've got pretty much the exact same amount of coffee between the two. And taste difference, I can't really see one, I don't think, between each. It's a good strong brew coming out of the 585. And tastes pretty much just the same coming out of the 580. So I really don't see a lot of difference between flavor profile on either of these machines. And that is something that's cool because it's going to keep drink consistent depending on which one it is that you end up making use of. All right, guys, so in summary, let's just talk about the differences real quick between these two machines one more time. Tray is pretty much the same between both of them. Removable, has a pod collection tray, but more pod collection on the 585, 30 as opposed to the 10 over here on the 580. Beyond that, trays are about the same with the exception of clearance. Definitely a little more clearance over here on the 585 than there is on the 580. Moving up, again, difference between the two spigots. You have that adjustable spigot on the 585. You do not have that on the 580. When it comes to operation, a lot more buttons and controllability over here on the 585. You've got that LCD screen that acts as a notification center for the machine, tells you what it is that you're making, when it's time to clean the machine, things like that. On the 580, you do not have that. You've just got the 3 buttons for brewing. You've got your power button on the top. You've got the 6 buttons over here on the 585 that give you access to the different controls. Now again, talking about the difference between those two controls, you can manually adjust the brew temperature on the 585, can't do that on the 580. You have a dedicated rinse button, you do not have that on the 580. And you're going to find that that LCD screen is going to give you, again, a notification to tell you when it's time to clean the machine, when it's time to fill up the water tank, various things like that. So controls, basically the same, but still a little bit of difference with respect to operation. Same brewing mechanism on both of them, 19 bar pressure pump, take the same pods, the Keffi pods obviously. Both of them can do cafe lattes, regular brewed coffee. There's no tea option at the making of this video, but we'll see if that comes sometime in the future. But you can do the cafe lattes and the espressos and the regular brewed coffee. Big difference as well between the two of these is the tank size. You've got that 118 fluid ounce tank over here on the 585, and you got the 33 fluid ounce tank over here on the 580. So definitely a little bit of difference between those. And overall operation, really pretty much the same when it comes to the beverages that you're going to be making. Now, when it comes down to price between these two, that's something a lot of folks are going to be wondering about. You're looking at $399 as the suggested retail price on the Verismo 585. On the 580, you're looking at a suggested retail price of $199. So there's a definite price difference between these two, especially considering that they both do the same type of beverages. So that may be a deciding factor for you. But again, we are kind of thinking that maybe there's going to be some more Keffi pod options down the road and things like that for both of these machines. So if you decide that you want to go big, you can go big with the 585. Beyond that, both of these machines definitely creating some impressive beverages, allowing you to make good cafe lattes at home, nice cups of coffee, or just pull an espresso shot. And speaking of espresso shot, that's one of the last things that I should mention. On the 585, you can do a Lungo espresso shot, and you don't do that over here on the 580. So there's a little bit of a difference, but you can adjust water flow on both of them so as to adjust the flavor of your beverage and get it ultimately to exactly where you want it to be. So there you go, guys. Side-by-side comparison of Starbucks single-serve coffee machines. Again, the Verismo 585 and the Verismo 580. Both of these are available right now. You can check out our other videos for some more information on both of these machines. Find out about recipes and a lot of other cool things that you can do with them. As always, guys, I'm Brian with Aromacup.com, and I want to remind you guys, enjoy your cup, and I'll see you next time. Take care.